Welcome back to Before the Basket, where we give you the rundown on Indiana's men's basketball. Alongside Kara Adams, I'm Zion Brown. How's it going, Kara?
Pretty good. Little chilly in Bloomington today, but other than that, pretty good.
Well, let's go back before last week we talked about kind of IU's first big matchup of the year coming against South Carolina. The Hoosiers won that game at home, 87-71 against the Gamecocks. So, Kara, what stood out to you in that big win for IU?
Well, it was just a dominant win at home for the Hoosiers. Really just took control of the game and just went with it. But Miles Rice stood out to me a lot. 23 points. Mackenzie Mbako, once again, just looking so consistent. 17 points, 7 rebounds. Defense is looking much better than his freshman year season. So Indiana just looked much more like a cohesive unit to me out there on the court. And another thing is they just looked like they were enjoying themselves a lot. Like Cannon Carlisle went for the alley-oop with Mackenzie, but ended up getting a half-court three, which was just kind of a crazy play. But they just really seemed like they're having fun playing out there together.
Yeah, it was really a solid performance for this IU team that didn't really blow out a lot of teams out last year. To blow out another power conference opponent was a big deal. Even if South Carolina may not be the best team going forward, I think that showed a lot. Now we'll talk about what's coming next, this Thanksgiving week for Indiana. They're going to the Bahamas to play in the Battle for Atlantis for the first time in program history. They'll be playing Louisville to start that tournament off. But before we even talk about the cards, it's just the first time we'll see this team in the regular season away from Assembly Hall. So, Kara, how do you expect Indiana to look outside of Bloomington?
Well, certainly it'll be a different environment for all of them. And they've played in some different environments. They were at Tennessee for that exhibition game. And that was a game that really felt more of like a January feel, not just an exhibition. So I think as long as they come out ready to go, no sluggish or slow starts from the beginning, come out ready as a cohesive group, I think they'll be ready to go from the beginning and just kind of push the pace in transition, lock down defense, and then use their guys and get buckets to fall. It's
always a different environment when you just step outside of your home, and especially in Atlantis because it's a smaller arena, it's a smaller venue, but you will have some home fans there. You'll have some fans on each side, and pretty much all the games IU plays there. They'll play 3 there total. So we'll see what that looks like for the Hoosiers in that kind of odd setting. Now let's talk about IU's first matchup in that tournament. It will be against Louisville, as we mentioned. These teams played last year in MSG in the Empire Classic, but that was a whole different set of squads on both ends. So what are you looking for from Louisville heading into this game?
Well, I like Pat Kelsey a lot. He's a great coach. He's really kind of just embracing Louisville, trying to get the city back to what it once was with basketball. And I really think that's going to be beneficial for them. But obviously, super new team, 12 new transfers. Pat brought one of his guys over from College of Charleston as well. But I'm looking to see Chucky Hepburn. He's familiar with the Big Ten, Wisconsin point guard, but just transferred in. He's a very steady presence for them out there on the court, averaging about 10 points per game. So I think a Chucky Hepburn, Miles Rice matchup will be very entertaining to watch. But I'm also excited to see Kason Pryor. He's their leading scorer, averaging about 15 points per game, 7 rebounds, but he comes off the bench. And I think that just goes to show that Louisville has a lot of depth this season, maybe more than people are realizing, which is similar to Indiana. Both these teams didn't have as much depth last season, but now really have a deep bench and they can use a lot of guys.
These are 2 super proud, historic programs that missed the NCAA tournament last year. This will be a good matchup to see which one can maybe get back on track this season.
Certainly.
For more on Louisville, we are joined by Louisville Sports Cardinals Radio Network host William McDermott next here on Before the Basket. Now joining us on Before the Basket is the Louisville Sports Radio Network's own and IU alum William McDermott. How's it going, man?
I'm good, Zion. Thanks for having me on. It's always good to be back in the media school and talk about hoops. IU, Louisville, it's exciting.
Can't wait for that matchup on Wednesday. First, I just want to ask you, what is the biggest difference you have seen from the Cardinals so far in the first few games in the first year of the Pat Kelsey era?
Well, Zion, from the outside looking in at the past couple years in regards of Louisville basketball, I think everybody can acknowledge that things were not going how they needed to be under Kenny Payne, and I think I didn't really fully understand the gravity of the situation, how bad it really got in Louisville and at the Yum Center. But Pat Kelsey comes in. He was hired in March, coming over from College of Charleston. He's young. He's got a lot of energy. He's a Midwest guy. He's from Cincinnati, Ohio, and he wants to be there. There was a video of him before the Tennessee game a couple weeks ago. He was walking around campus asking kids and students if they were going to the game and if they knew about the game. And it was just, it was nice to see that because we hadn't really seen that under Kenny Payne. And Pat Kelsey has really brought some new life and energy to the program, along with 13 new scholarship players. So it's an exciting time down there.
those new players is where I wanted to go next here. Pretty much the whole rotation is new, right? Transfers from all over the place. You got a freshman as well. How have you seen this new group and this new cast of guys come together so far this season?
They had a trip to the Bahamas over the summer already. They went to Bahamas. They played 2 exhibition matches there, and it went really well. I mean, that was a really good bonding experience for this team. Anytime you bring in a group, and obviously now in modern day college basketball with the transfer portal, you're going to have new additions who are older every single season. So I don't think it's been as challenging as people may have thought it was going to be. I think they're getting along just fine. But, you look at the roster, and one thing Pat Kelsey really tried to do is, he's going to bring in guys that fit his play style, what he wants to do. They're going to shoot the 3. They're going to get out and run. They're not very big. They don't really have a traditional post big man, but it's a deep roster, and it's a very experienced roster. This is one of the top 10 most experienced rosters in the entire country in terms of Division I experience.
A name that a lot of IU fans will surely remember is Chucky Hepburn, coming over from Wisconsin, where he was the point guard there for a few years. Now he is at Louisville. How has he played so far for the Cardinals, and what are you expecting for that matchup when he goes against Miles Rice on Wednesday?
It's going to be exciting. Chucky Hepburn, I think, if you're an Indiana fan and you follow the Big Ten, you're familiar with him. He's an all-conference caliber defender, no matter the conference he's in. Big Ten, ACC, I think he's going to be in the run for ACC Defensive Player of the Year. I really do. And as a guard, that's hard. Yeah. That's hard. But he leads the team in steals so far. He's real savvy. He's scrappy as well. Just a really solid defender. Now, we did see Miles Rice handle a really good defender in Zakai Ziegler in that exhibition against Tennessee. I know that was an exhibition, but I don't think you can just throw that performance out the window for him. That mattered, and that I think he showed a lot of people his capabilities. So to your point, it's going to be a really exciting matchup, and I think whoever gets the upper hand, it'll give their team the edge. Chucky's not the offensive juggernaut that Miles is. He just isn't. But he can get after you defensively and be that kind of pest on the perimeter.
You spoke earlier about how Pat Kelsey has integrated this kind of small ball style up and down the floor, while IU, we know, still starts their 2 big men, Malik Renew and Oumar Ballo. So how do you expect that matchup to look on Wednesday?
Well, it's going to be interesting. Louisville's had a couple injuries in the past couple of weeks. Abubakar Traore, who transferred from Long Beach State, he's going to be out for several weeks with a broken arm. Corin Johnson missed the game against Bellarmine with a shoulder injury. I don't expect that to be long-term. So the rotation is thinning, and that's certainly not a good thing, but this is a team that's deep enough that they could do that. But to your question about the bigs, they don't have a traditional big man. James Scott comes with Pat Kelsey from College of Charleston. He's the only big that can't stretch the floor. They also have Kason Pryor, who's 6'10", coming over from South Florida. He's been coming off the bench. Really, a really interesting player. Kind of plays like Kevin Durant out on the perimeter. Can be a little bit reckless at times with the basketball, turn the ball over. Not the greatest defender, but any given night he can get you 20. I'm really curious to see how Mike Woodson handles the minutes with Oumar Ballo and Malik Renew, because I think having them both on the court together against this Louisville team that is going to drive and kick, they can play 5 out, especially when they bring in BYU transfer Noah Waterman. He started the game against Bellarmine in Traore's place, and he's a 5-out center at 6'11". It's going to be difficult for Ballo in particular to handle guys like him and Pryor out on the perimeter.
All right, I know we're a few days out, but what is your prediction for this game in the battle for Atlantis first round?
Well, if you watched the Louisville game against Tennessee, I think the one thing that stood out to everybody was the lack of physicality on Louisville's part. Tennessee, and defensively in particular, and you have to give Zakai Ziegler credit, really were physical with Louisville's guards and wings. They couldn't get anything going towards the rim. They only attempted 10 layups. They only made 6 baskets that were not three-pointers in that game. Louisville, though, did turn Tennessee over 20 times, and they still lost by 20 points. So there was a clear discrepancy in the physicality, especially in the interior and around the lane that Pat Kelsey said had to get better. On paper, Indiana is the more physical team. They're bigger. They should be dominant on the glass. They should be dominant in the paint. And if Louisville is not hitting shots from the perimeter, and remember, they're going to be playing in a ballroom. That's a different shooter's background. It could go either way with the shooting. So if shots aren't falling for Louisville and Indiana is able to control the paint and around the rim, I think IU wins by 10.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, William. Enjoy your break, your holiday hoops. I can't wait.
Thank you, Zion. Thanks for having me.
Coming up in just a moment, Kara rejoins me as we talk through the rest of the Battle for Atlantis tournament. Thanks to William for joining us to talk about some Louisville. And now to wrap up today's show, let's preview some other potential matchups IU could have in Atlantis, depending on what happens in that Louisville game and what happens on the other end of this bracket as well. They'll either play Gonzaga or West Virginia on Thursday on Thanksgiving Day. So, Kara, what are you looking at in those two teams between Gonzaga and West Virginia?
Well, I think either matchup would be very exciting for Indiana, but let's talk about Gonzaga first. Obviously, legendary coach Mark Few, such a consistent, successful program that they always have. Ryan Nembhard having himself quite the senior season. I found this earlier. He's the only player since Chris Paul, when he played for the Clippers, 2014-2015 season, to have recorded 50-plus points, 40-plus assists, and record 5 or fewer turnovers over the first 4 games of the season. So he's certainly off to a strong senior season start for him, excuse me. But Gonzaga would be such a great matchup. Indiana and Gonzaga haven't played each other since 2008, and I just think Indiana fans would be very excited for that game. Now for West Virginia on that end, obviously Darian DeVries taking over for Bob Higgins in his first season. So a very new team, 8 people from the transfer portal came in, but DeVries brought over his son, Tucker DeVries, who's been a great presence for them so far, and as well as Javon Small. He's actually from South Bend, so played 2 years in Indianapolis at Franklin Central. So another Indiana kid they could have to go up against. But I think that would be, West Virginia's a gritty team, so that would be another strong matchup for Indiana.
And going against Gonzaga, a team that we've already seen get some quality victories. They beat Baylor handily on the first night of the season. Also got a win against San Diego State. That would pose a really good challenge for the Hoosiers. Should that come, now let's look on the whole other side of the bracket. Obviously, there's no way for us to predict what IU was going to do the first 2 days and what everybody else is going to do the first 2 days as well. But just looking at that other side of this 8-team bracket, is there one team that stands out the most to you, Kara?
Well, Arizona for sure stands out for me. That would be another top 25 matchup for the Hoosiers, which, as we mentioned so many times before, just another great way for Indiana to get another resume win under their belt with a top 25 non-conference game. Obviously, led by Caleb Love, they have one of the strongest backcourts in the country. Arizona would be a great matchup, and maybe get a little redemption after that game 2 years ago in Las Vegas when Indiana really just did not play the way they could that game, and just I think it would be a good rematch and redemption for them.
And in that matchup, we would, if that were to happen, we would see Umar Ballo playing the team that he just left this past offseason. That sets up a whole nother storyline as well if that happens. Well, Kara, I got one more thing for you.
All right.
It's Thanksgiving coming up this week. I need your starting 3, entree, side, dessert. Thanksgiving.
All right, I'm going to go, I like turkey. I'm a turkey fan. Turkey for my entree. Sides, I like sweet potatoes with the marshmallows toasted on top. That's my favorite. My aunt always makes them. They're amazing. And then for dessert, pumpkin pie. I'm not a big apple pie fan for some reason. I don't know why. I always like the pumpkin.
I like your picks though. I can manage those picks.
Okay.
I'm a ham. I like turkey. Don't get me wrong. Some good ham is better. I go stuffing for my side and then banana pudding for my dessert.
Okay.
I can't wait. I between basketball and food, like Thanksgiving week, is just everything. It's everything. Well, thanks again for joining me, Kara. Thanks to William McDermott as well. And thanks to you for watching this week's edition of Before the Basket.